So, welcome everybody to our talk about stack migration, same procedure as every year. I'm Stephan Merker, working with SAP. I'm active in the Cloud Foundry community since 8-something years, and I'm member of the Technical Oversight Committee.
And my name is Florian Braun. I'm also for roughly 5 years at SAP, and I'm a contributor to the Cloud Controller API, and mainly work there.
So, stacks, what is it at all? Let's look at the anatomy of a build pack application. First of all, you have there the droplet. The droplet is provided by the user. Its life cycle is under the control of the user. It contains the compiled version of the application built by a build pack, usually that happens during staging. All fine, all nice, but of course your droplet requires an operating system on which to run on, and that's where the stack actually comes into the game. It's the operating system. It's called stack. Another word you find is the root file system. The stack needs another layer, that's the kernel on which the operating system runs. The kernel itself is provided by the Bosch stem cell of the Diego cells, the VMs on which your container run. In contrast to the droplet, the stack and the kernel itself are managed, updated, provided silently by Cloud Foundry. So even if you push an application and forget about it, a scenario which happens from time to time, especially with consultancies, then at least the operating system of the application is up to date, should have no security vulnerabilities, and at least from that side, you are safe for quite some time, and you can forget about it. So many people don't even know that there's a stack. What is it? Never seen, never heard. That changes at a certain point in time, and this time was actually 3 weeks ago. If you look at the stacks, you can do that by this command cf stacks, and you will find 2 versions of it. cf Linux FS3 based on Ubuntu 18.04 and cf Linux FS4 based on Ubuntu 22.04. The FS4 stack is a new stack everybody should migrate to, but the old stack has actually an issue because the support, forget about the small images here, the message is it ran out of support. It's dead, unmaintained, insecure, and collecting CVEs like hell. And you don't want to run on this old stack. That's something for sure. How do you switch the stack? If you have an application, you can do that on cf push with this maybe hidden ---- stack command, or you specify the stack explicitly in the application manifest. If you don't do that, something comes into the game which is called the default stack. Also a slight involved feature. The default stack is configured per foundation. These days of a well-maintained foundation, it should be cf Linux FS4, of course. And if you push a new application for the very first time, you create the application, then the default stack is taken and is configured into your app. That also means if you have pushed the application beginning of the year where cf Linux FS4 was not yet there, it was configured on the old stack, amount of maintenance, and it stays there. Nothing changes unless you explicitly configure it. That means existing apps, whether you update them, whether the default stack changes, whatever, they will stay on the old stack until you do something. That's a problem. There's one exception for this rule, as always. Most blue-green deployment procedures actually change the stack automatically when the default stack changes, which should have happened already, because a blue-green deployment means actually creating a new app and deleting the old one and switch over and over again, which also leads to surprises that we will soon see very soon. How was the new stack introduced into CF deployment? It all happened with the very first request for change, 001, beginning of last year, January 2022, where the decision was taken by the Technical Oversight Committee to switch from Bionic to Jammy, leave out the intermediate 2004 release provided by Canonical. It also laid out the work packages and a time plan, etc., so that all the working groups know what to do. In April, this Ubuntu release, Jammy Jellyfish, was released so that we had now the foundation to start the work. And in July, the first cf Linux FS4 release was actually cut and published. It was just there, a Bosch release, hardly usable because it was not yet integrated into Cloud Foundry. Over autumn, the first build packs followed and adapted or provided support for the new stack. And actually, end of November with CF deployment 23.3, it was the first time that the new stack FS4 was available with limited build packs as opt-in in a standard CF deployment version. Time passed on, more and more build packs were added, and eventually in March, with version 27 of CF deployment, we had the first time a FS4 opt-in with full build pack coverage. March 23. That was actually the same time when the initial end-of-life date of Ubuntu 18.04 was announced, which is end of March. It was put as April on the slides. Fortunately, Canonical offered 2 more months until end of May with support, so that the stack ended at the 31st of May. In end of April, with CF deployment version 28, FS4 became the default. And with version 30 in May, FS3 is only shipped as an opt-in. So if you now take a up-to-date CF deployment, you will just get a clean installation with FS4. There were some more events I will talk about later. This FS4 without Ruby Python, which caused some interesting discussions and trouble. And finally, it's also still open, but it will happen in the next releases that we remove FS3 completely from CF deployment because it's out of maintenance. That is the picture from the community, from the provider point of view. Now let's look how that feels from a platform operator point of view at the example of SAP. So we announced the new stack and at the same time the deprecation of the old stack in December 22, and in beginning of 23, very first weeks of January, we shipped the first new stack, FS4, with, I think, a set of 4 build packs, just to get something rolling. That was pretty early, and not all the development was yet finished. It was a CF Linux FS4 0.something version. As you can see at the adoption numbers, running build pack apps across our 30 productive landscapes, we have far beyond 100K applications, just to give you an idea of what we are talking about here. Well, it got unnoticed. You offer something in the release notes nobody cares about. We have adoption numbers, 1K, 2K apps. Most likely, these were the applications that we provide together with our landscape.
Could you just step here?
Okay, no problem. Yep, that changed when we actually switched over FS4 as a default stack, because now all new applications and also the mentioned blue-green deployments, which is a quite common pattern, started to use FS4 sort of under the hood. Most people, or a lot of applications don't see anything from that. Some found out that the applications failed when deploying, try to solve the problems. But now the consumption of FS4 started to grow. It helped also a lot to get the remaining build packs available. And then as a last step, when we approached the end of life date, was a procedure where we will talk in detail later about. We triggered as a service to our users a graceful migration, central migration of all the remaining FS3 apps to FS4. This migration then also helped to migrate more apps. Meanwhile, we have roughly 20% of FS3 apps left, and 80% are already on the new stack, which is a good number. But it leaves 20% of old apps, and we need to decide how to continue with the stack. When do we want to remove it? We want to remove it because it's a company policy to not ship unmaintained insecure software. On the other hand, we do have users on the old stack, so it's a dilemma, basically, security versus business continuity, and the final decision is still open. Challenges of the stack migration. First of all, it was build pack availability, which was difficult. So we were actually forced to switch to FS4 as default stack without having the full build pack availability available, which was difficult, which was criticized by some customers, but that's the way it was. The last build pack just got available in March, April 23, which is at the same time when the initial end of life was announced for Ubuntu, late to the party. Third-party build packs. I don't want to talk in detail about it, but they come even later. June. And customers on the other side, they expect at least 3 months migration period. And 3 months is for them tight. It's a sprint. It's 1 year would be better. But that's a conflict and issue. Second point is communication. Yes, we announced the deprecation of CF Linux FS3 in our release notes several times. But who reads release notes? It's an issue. We had also a blog article. It helped a lot, some discussions, some common problems mentioned. But again, we do not reach all users. And here it comes again to company policies. We are not allowed to send out mails to all space developers. It would have helped, probably, at least, but was not an option. So at the end of the day, the final communication will be with the removal of the old stack for some of the users, a matter of fact. And finally, the last minute Ruby Python removal from CF Linux FS4 when the stack 1.0 was released in April, late. There was a decision to remove Ruby and Python. That's a good decision from security point of view because it removes the attack surface and you can get the runtime in an up-to-date version by build packs, all fine, all good, but it was for existing users of CF Linux FS4 an incompatible change, and that's something you cannot do because stacks are updated automatically and everybody expects that this works without any noise. This topic was then addressed by an RFC 16, and the decision was to provide CF Linux FS2 in 2 versions. One version that addresses the security concerns, and another version that addresses the compatibility concerns, and the operator has now the nice task to choose between these 2 options. This version is meanwhile released, and it's also available via an ops file as opt-in in the latest CF Linux CF deployment version.
Yes, I can now talk a bit more about the central stack migration we used to make it a bit easier for customers and to reduce the pain on the operators when the final stack migration finally would come at some point. Basically, what we did to reduce the problem for us is the same as every app developer would need to do when changing the stack, means change the stack and restage the app. We did it in a more structured way. I hope it's large enough to see. We fitted it with some preconditions, like get all apps that are FS4, FS3. Do not get apps that have a specific exclude label. We offered customers a possibility to opt out of it. And nobody read that. It wasn't a release note, nobody read it, so you can imagine it. And do just migrate apps once. So once we tried to migrate an app, we never tried again. And what we essentially do is then get the latest app package, change the stack of the app, then we build the droplet and essentially restart the app. And then there are 2 different ways we thought of, a non-graceful and a graceful variant. We went with the graceful variant, like the numbers you see are the graceful variants. So that means we wait for the app to get healthy and rely on the app's health checks. And in case the app doesn't get healthy, is in a fail state or something, we revert it back to the old droplet and the old stack and mark it as like failed. We never touch it again. And in case it worked and it's running, we are happy. And there is a second variant where we would not check the app's health state. We just change the droplet. And if it's in a crash loop, it is in a crash loop. Eventually, we maybe need to run this before the stack gets deleted, because inevitably then every app that is on the old stack is down anyway. So that's basically the quick, abstracted summary of what we did. And on the good side is that you can run it in batches. So we have quite a huge number of apps. We run this logic in parallel in relation to how many cloud controller VMs we have, like how many API capacity we have. And we actually got roughly 20% of apps to be migrated from FS3 to FS4 with remarkably little customer impact, so it was well perceived. Not many complaints. It basically went unnoticed. And, on the downside, we still have 20% of apps on FS3, and we don't know what to do with it. Like maybe the non-graceful variant, but we'll see. We collected also some ideas to increase the customer experience or to make it better for customers to, work with the stack. One thing is, we skipped basically one Ubuntu release, so we could release the stack on par with the Ubuntu releases to make it more frequent. We could change stuff in the cloud controller to allow for like customer-specific stacks to offer them paid extended support. We could allow customers to bring their own stack. So if they are relying on like insecure stacks, they can. It's not our issue anymore. And finally, one point is also the cloud native build packs, which do not rely on the stack at all, at least like not on the stack the V2 build packs use. But that would also not solve it for apps that still rely on V2 build packs. But maybe we don't need to solve everything for everything. I'm just skipping the bonus and downsides because of time. And on the conclusion side, we can say that stacks are a good thing for like web developers. The migration in itself, like a breaking change in the stack, is currently not a nice experience from a developer side, and also not from an operator side. And there's a huge dilemma between like running insecure software and just plainly causing outages for customers. Hopefully we come up with more ideas and how to improve it in RFCs or something similar. And it's definitely an area where we can improve a lot. While the central stack migration helped a lot, it doesn't solve every problem we have. It just makes it less painful. Do we have any questions? Go ahead. Do we have a microphone?
Hello. So are there plans to work with getting like that central stack migration functionality in upstream?
Not really. Like it's built on top of the Cloud Foundry API. It's not very much logic, and we also, at least I think, it is more workaround than an actual solution.
Showing like the stack compatibility of an app, right? Like, is this app actually, can it run on this new stack, right? That's basically what you're doing, right? You're testing if that works, right? And if we could communicate that information back, or maybe have like a built-in mechanism to test these compatibility things.
I mean, our test is not very nice because essentially we switch it and then we look if the app runs or not.
But I mean, like that's fine. Like you do it in bulk. I think that's the thing. Like, and we have like Diego, which can run things in bulk, right? That's what you're reusing, like in that sense.
Is to a certain extent a stack migrator CLI plugin that does a little bit in that direction. It uses a rolling deployment for updating. You can do it for your own organization, let's say in a limited scope, but it's something that runs via a CLI, so it is not suitable for centrally migrating a whole big, huge foundation. But for single users or groups of users, the Stack Migrator plugin is at least something you could look at.
How's time looking? More questions?
Thank you. So Arslan here. So have you dealt some situations where you have migrated some applications for the customers and they say they want to go back to the old stack?
If you look at the lifecycle of such applications that are problematic, the failure can happen at certain stages. It can happen during staging, and that's actually the majority of errors. the customer will notice nothing, not even a silent downtime, because you can do that completely without touching the application. The next level is then you could successfully stage on FS4, and then you restart the application, and it doesn't come up with a health check because the customer has a meaningful health check configured. Then we configure everything back and switch back. If the customer has no health check or doesn't even know what a health check is and uses this process style health check that succeeds, then we keep the app on FS4, but it doesn't work. I mean, we have no validation, we have no testing. It's just guessing. And well, if an application, let me phrase it politely like this, if an application has never thought about health checks, they probably also don't have availability checks running. The customer may or may not notice it and can explicitly switch back. We got, as mentioned, very few tickets where customers said, hey, we have noticed a little bit of flakiness here. What happened? And then we could explain, refer to the announcement, of course, of this stack migration. But I'm not aware that somebody of a big escalation of something where a customer said he didn't know what to do. It's possible to switch back because the old stack is still available. Easy thing.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, I noticed that you wanted to do like the stack changes every 2 years because you want to do it more frequently. Well, that also means like that we need to bump the stem cells like for every 2 years. So that's also where we should all as a community put more effort into.
Yeah, I mean, stacks and stem cells are not 100% tightly coupled. So we ran also FS3 on the Gemmy stem cell. Yeah. But it would make sense from security point of view to have here a more frequent release, because then you also have this overlap of 2 years, and that allows the customer to go much smoother. This time, effectively, the customer, let's say the average customer has 3 months. If we are, you need at least all your build packs supported, and then comes this end of life. So let's say you have 3 months for the migration. This is a challenge, at least for the bigger users, the companies with CI and security and quality teams, etc., etc. And if we would offer every 2 years, that's a realistic option. It means more effort, build pack support, etc. But you can have then all the time 2 stacks in parallel and give, relaxed 2 years migration period to the users. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, Oh, yeah, I know it makes sense. It's just that we have like, I see all these issues. No. Yeah, so it just means that we need to maintain multiple stem cells, multiple stacks for a longer period of years, because now we just do it every 4 years. So we just have longer cycles. Yeah, that's true.
Then thank you. We are around, so just ask us if you have any questions.